Dr. Inderpal, he has a passion for mentoring and teaching budding managers and to hold leadership. He held leadership positions in various business schools in Pune and around and Mumbai. He's currently the director of Universal Business School, Karjat, beautiful place, beautiful college. I've been there, stayed there also. And today he will talk on future of employability. And all our participants will get certificates from Vidyashilp University, Alliance University, Universal Business School, OP Jindal University, and definitely Arch College of Design and Business.
Sure, sir, of course.
Yes, Inderpal sir, Dr. Sir.
Thank you so much for introducing me, and it's a pleasure, absolute pleasure to be here, talking to stalwarts from the industry. I am still a novice. I consider myself to be a novice because I'm constantly learning and trying to be agile all the time. Right. So just coming to the topic that we'll be discussing, I will be talking about the 21st century skills that are required, how the entire thing has changed from what our generation went through in terms of learning, and how the entire thing has changed, especially post-COVID area, where the entire requirements for education changed, or the concept of education changed from an offline module to more of an online module, and how that has also gone forward, and how it has improved over the times. In the last 1 year, we've seen a lot of improvements in that area, and I think it's also very important to understand that somewhere down the line, it is going to be the future, but maybe not the entire thing being online, because the human social contact is very important for students to grow. At the same time, it's also very important for the face-to-face contact to happen, in terms of students being able to connect directly with the teacher or the professor, and to understand what is the context that is being discussed in. Second important area to be looked at in the offline model is more in terms of trying to understand how peer knowledge works, because in an offline mode it is still a very it's a very distant mode, even though you might be sitting next to each other in the next cabin. But on this model, it's a little different, it's a little difficult. So I have a small PPT, not too much, and I'll just run you through that, and then I'm open to taking questions. Is that okay, sir? If I may be allowed to share the screen.
Yes, I'll just give you the access, sir. Yeah. Yes, sir. You have the access.
Thank you. Yeah, so the topic being future skills and employability, I am totally in agreement with what Mr. Mistry said, Professor Mistry said about, the VUCA world. The entire world has changed. It's volatile, it's uncertain. The entire thing is so ambiguous that we are not sure about what's going to happen in the next few months. We're not sure about what's going to happen in the next few years. We don't know how things are going to change. And this has become more realistic after the COVID situation. I'm also in agreement with what he said about, students going through understanding the hard skills as well as the soft skills. So the soft skills are, it's a fairly loosely used term, but I'll probably talk about some of the skills that are essentially required, which are a part of what we call as soft skills. And these are, I think, more important in terms of how the world is changing, and what is required for a student or a potential manager to be able to come into the corporate world, or come into the world to make it better for everybody. The fact that he spoke about, the social angle, or how we are damaging our Mother Earth and creating more and more, let's say, the problems that are being created for nature, and now nature coming back to us and saying, no, I'm still stronger than you are. It's something that's very important to make our future managers more aware of how social and environmental skills are to be built in. So I think what I'll talk about is basically, what are the new skills? Now, this is something that has been talked about continuously by the World Economic Forum. These have been broken up into 3 different areas. One of them, the first one being learning skills, which is what we are imparting during our schools, during our classrooms, classroom training, etc. These are the learning skills. Then there is the literary skills also. And the third one, which is most important, is the life skills that we're talking about, which is going to take these people through adaptability and being more agile in terms of being able to sustain themselves in the new changing world. So the learning skills are basically the 4 C's, which talk about critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. If we've seen in the last few months or the last 1 year, we've understood that it has become very important as far as collaboration goes. Creativity is one thing that we would use it in a different manner, but creativity has led to, like sir said about the design thinking. Now, this we need to find creative ways of making life better for us. We need to look at creative ways to make to find solutions for the problems that are there. Traditionally, there were certain there were problems that were being solved in a certain manner, but now things have changed. You need to be more collaborative, and to be able to do all these things, the communication is very important. So being able to communicate properly, being able to put across your point to everybody is the area that these are the 4 C's that come under the learning skills. The other one, which I talked about, is the literary skills. There are, again, different types of literary skills here, which is basically information literacy, which talks about statistics, data, facts, and figures. The media literacy, understanding how it's been published, and the technology, which is very important in today's world, how we have moved into a technology age, and how that is, that's again agile and it's changing on a day-to-day basis. So what was earlier in terms of being, the analytics, etc., which are being done probably on an Excel sheet today, have moved into business analytics using various software technologies, etc. That's what technology literacy is all about. And we need to make our students aware of how this thing has changed. Third one is life skills, which is the most important part, because this is something that I believe students need to understand, because this is something which is going to take them through life, which is going to help them to sustain and actually face the challenges that are going to be coming in during their corporate lives, or even in personal areas. So these are the areas that probably we need to look at in terms of these life skills, which is one of them is flexibility. Leadership is another area which we talk about leadership, being able to just lead people, but leadership is beyond that. It's not about being able to just lead people. You need to be able to set a pattern which people will look up to. People will be able to look up to you as a leader, and then maybe take that as a path forward. Initiative is something which is, again, very important, and I think is missing in today's student population, in the sense that, sir also said about the parents. I am totally in agreement with him on those lines. It's very important for the parents to understand that life is going to get only tougher and more competitive going ahead. So we need to get students to take initiatives to move out of their comfort zones and to ensure that they become more socially adaptive. Right. So these are typically the new skills. These are the ones that have been spoken about by the World Economic Forum. These are the skills that are essentially required, and they are also called as the 21st century skills. Moving forward, so these are the different skill indicators that are there. So socially and emotional indicators. People need to be much stronger, being able to face the challenges that they're going to be coming in with. So the emotional intelligence, social intelligence, and one word that I heard just recently is called moral intelligence also. So moral intelligence becoming one very important area where you need to be able to take a decision which you feel is morally correct. It might be correct in a larger sense, but then you also need to take moral responsibility for that decision that you're going to be taking. So these are areas. So we earlier used to talk only about the social intelligence, or maybe EQ and EI. So now this is moved beyond that. It's more of social intelligence and also getting into moral intelligence. So social and emotional indicators are self-management, self-awareness, etc. And the academic indicators are the ones that we are probably imparting as teachers, as professors, are the ones that we are imparting to our students, which is again a focus, I believe personally, that we need to move away from. So these are just indicators. I believe personally that it's an indicator about a person's, let's say, intelligence, or to a certain extent, how a person could write an examination, or how much a person has understood. But I think it's much beyond that, where we need to kind of train a student or a person to be able to apply the application of those theoretical concepts, or application of those the teaching that you've done, the theory that has been done is more important, because I can learn all the theory, but I might not be able to apply it. Then it's not of any usage at all. So why do they matter? Absolutely, these reasons being that business leaders have cited soft skills as being the most important driver of success in the future. Soft skills being because, again, those first ones, if you look at, we're talking about collaboration, we're talking about creativity, we're talking about being able to interact with people, social intelligence, etc. So these are the soft skills that essentially need to be able to build into our future leaders. The other one being students, they need to be prepared for jobs that do not exist. If you look at the jobs that have been there earlier, the entire job scenario has changed in the last few years. Today, we are moving towards a gig economy. There has been this concept of mass resignation, the great resignation in the US. If you look at that, people have moved away from traditional jobs. They are more comfortable working with smaller jobs or shorter jobs. We have multiple examples in India itself, especially of people who have been in the corporate world, stressed out in the corporate world, but have taken on jobs probably just to feel a little more freer. They have taken up jobs with probably an Ola or an Uber. They drive an Uber taxi, they're happy. So that's what gives them satisfaction. There are a lot of new jobs that have been created, which are the gig economy. So this is something we need to train our students for, that the job that they see today might not exist 10 years hence by the time they come into the corporate world. Social media has also changed the human interaction to a very large extent. We become, so like I said, the interaction socially, but a personal face-to-face interaction is very different from having an interaction over maybe a screen. Or even you are present on social media, but the extent of social media, you need to be able to know where to go, where to draw the line, how much to get involved into social media also, which are the ones which are going to be beneficial. So students these days need to be taught that also. And I think it's best that we catch them young so that they are able to utilize the benefits and they understand the benefits of how this is to be utilized for their own growth. Internet has dramatically increased knowledge. We've seen that at the click of a button, Google gives you all the information, and it's available to everything. So I think that's also impacted the way that people have started to think or to retain knowledge. The retention of knowledge in students has also gone down drastically. I'm not against this, definitely not against this, but I think that's a part of technology. But I think people also need to learn how to process and analyze all this knowledge, where it is to be used, something that needs to be retained, some amount of knowledge needs to be retained, and that knowledge also needs to be kind of used at the right point of time. And the last one, the students, like I said, need to be able to, they need to be taught how to apply these facts and ideas towards complex problems. So it's the application part, which is something that we are probably missing out on. That is something that we will have to teach our students to be able to do. Now, how does this happen? Right. So this is basically all the various implications that we have. We've seen how changes have happened across the world because of COVID, maybe because of Brexit, the geopolitical scenario having changed across the country. The entire thing, because of all these activities that have been happening in the last few years, we've seen a change in the entire way that people have to respond now. So there are a lot of uncertainty ahead, which is again a part of the VUCA. So changing business models need to be applied. And I am for our students, since I am interacting with students of the MBA genre, they are potential future managers who are essentially required to rethink for the new challenges. They need to look at newer models, business models, which we again can call as design thinking. They need to rethink, and they need to be able to kind of re-strategize, be able to sustain their business, because we've seen in the last 2 years also a number of businesses have not been able to change themselves, or they've not been able to kind of adapt themselves to the challenges which have happened during COVID also. But there are others that we see who have grown dramatically. Re-strategize and then again refocus for growth, obviously. So this is how the changing business models have happened, how the business models are changing, and the managers for the future need to be trained for being able to rethink, re-strategize, and refocus for growth. So we need to create leaders to face new challenges, and hence they need to be adaptive and agile. Change, as everybody knows, is the only constant that we have seen. Change is the only constant in life, and hence it's important for the corporate as well as individual managers to be able to adapt and respond to change. Um, so there is always a reluctance to change. There is always a resistance to change, which is human nature. But I think if we are able to bring our students to this adaptability, to be able to understand that change is inevitable, it's definitely going to happen. It might change. The economic scenario might change. The policies might change. Your entire market share might change. Anything might change, right? So it's very important to understand that how do you cope up with such change. So they need to be taught about responding to change. So for which I think the most important point is we need to shift from, and I'm talking now about the graduate students and the postgraduate students. I think we need to shift from a pedagogy model to an andragogy model, where we need to treat them as learners rather than as students, and which is a focus that which is a focus which is going to help them to grow, to be able to understand what is actually required for them to learn, how much they're supposed to learn, how much they're supposed to understand, how are they going to apply. So basically, adult learning andragogy is adult learning, which is motivated and self-directed through interactive classrooms. This is something that we follow very passionately at Universal Business School. Bringing life experience and personal interest, which is basically talking to the students on a one-to-one basis, trying to make them understand how things have changed. So a lot of case studies, a lot of personal stories, which our faculty bring into this. And I think as teachers, we need to do that because this is very important. So that also helps them to think creatively, think outside the box, and also to think critically. Critical thinking is another very important point which needs to be probably brought up. They also need to move, like I said earlier, they need to move from a grade-oriented passion or a focus. They need to move to a goal-oriented focus. So grades are fine. I think what is important is also how are you going to apply those learnings into your life. So it's the goal that you need to have for your for your future. It could be in line with your strengths, or it could be in line with being able to understand what is it you need to do, and basis those goals that you've set for yourself. Basis those goals that you've set for yourself, you need to be able to understand how you're going to reach those goals. So inculcating your strengths or taking your strengths along, working on your weaknesses, and looking at those opportunities which are there to reach the goal that you have set for yourself. And obviously, they need to be respected as equals, because at this age, they also need to be taught that they are adults. They need to be responsible for all the actions that they're taking. And they also need to be responsible for inaction too. So we've seen that there is a lot of people who would fall into a trap of it's I would not say lethargy, but it's more in terms of a casual approach, getting into a comfort zone very easily. So they need to be made to understand that that's not a safe place to be in. Right. So the let's say the thing that we used to speak about, a rolling stone gathers no moss. Right. So the more you change, the more you adapt. You don't stay static. So towards which I think we need to move from the conventional teaching methods to unconventional teaching methods. This is very important for us as professors, as teachers, to understand that the conventional teaching methods, which would only probably textbooks or something like that, we need to move on to moving into unconventional teaching methods. And I think experiential and immersive learning is definitely the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Inderpal Singh. And sir, one thing is happening in Delhi. I'm sure it must be happening in all the cities also. All the insurance agents, they started driving Uber and Ola.
Yes.
A, they are earning money from that. B, they convert their Ola customers into their insurance customers also.
Yes. That's adaptability. That's how you remain relevant to the world.